this also on my stream. But I saw this coming. As soon as this alternative narratives or speculation of other things or some nefarious stuff was going on, as soon as that stuff started to come out, I remember I watched an episode of on the Charlie Kirk show, and his team basically said straight up, like, yeah, if you say anything that undermines us or implies anything illicit, we are going to come after you legally. And I think they only said it a few times, so it didn't really like hit the news feed like that. But I knew back then that they're gonna come after people. It might take a month, it might take 2 months or whatever, but they're gonna collect information, slowly gather piece of evidence, and start serving people with cease and desist. So I as I anticipated, it's happening now, and this is actually a very big reason why I stayed out of the whole Charlie Kirk theories situation, because I knew this was coming, dude. I just knew it was coming. So yeah.
But in terms of what's your thoughts? Like, okay, so 2 points. What, like, I guess I know your opinion on the chat on the assassination, or what is your opinion on the assassination for the public?
I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle, and the reason why I'll say that is because the official narrative has a lot of holes in it, right? There's problems with it. Right, and this is actually, and I've been very critical of the FBI and the Utah State Police Criminal Investigation Division for not being more transparent on this, right? So the official narrative has some holes that I don't like, but at the same time, the alternative theories, range from, Mossad did it, his microphone was actually a bomb, to it was a body double, to it was a hologram, like how conspiracy theories go sometimes. So, it's a very murky situation. And my biggest thing was, and whenever people ask me about this, I simply say I want to go to the trial, right? I think the trial, because keep in mind, he's going to be judged by his peers, right? Other Americans, just like me and everybody else in here that might be an American. So that means that the government's going to have, or well, in this case, the state's going to have to present all of its evidence to a jury pool. So I think I'm not saying the justice system is perfect, but that's probably the closest we're going to get to some level of real accountability and look at the actual evidence. So that's why I've been kind of reserving my judgment on that topic, because a lot of the theories create questions. None of the different theories have answered the questions. A lot of them create even more questions, if that makes sense.
I just want to clarify one point, because I think you might get a bit of hate, just maybe because people misunderstood your answer to the first bit. You said you stayed out of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know you as a person, so I know this can't be the reason, but it just comes across a bit like that. So I just want you to like kind of explain it a bit more or elaborate, because it comes across as you saying that you were scared that you were going to get a legal letter from them. But what did you mean by like you stayed out of it?
Okay, no, thank you for So no, I didn't stay out of it because I was worried about legal stuff. I just stayed out of it because all the drama around it, and I wasn't sure what the narrative was. Like, so for me, I don't like to come out and present information unless I'm like 100% sure that I can back it up, right? So I appreciate you asking me this question. I didn't give a shit about the legal stuff because I wasn't gonna go into it anyway. I just knew, because I saw a lot of people getting a lot of views on this stuff, I just knew that they were gonna start serving them legally. I knew that. So, but even if they weren't serving them legally, I wouldn't cover the topic anyway. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to make that distinction. Let me be explicitly clear about that. Whether or not they were going to serve cease and desist and sue people is irrelevant. I just didn't want to cover the topic because there's such a huge variance between everything. And me just being a former law enforcement guy, I can't in good faith entertain some of these theories. And to me, I looked at it like, I'm going to wait until everything comes out and I'm going to go to the trial. That was my approach to it. But the suing and the cease and desist, that had no fucking bearing on me covering this or not. It had more to do with wanting to see all the facts.
Yeah, I knew that. I just wanted to, because I knew how it came across at the beginning.
No, I appreciate
in
that.
terms of, no,
we got some smooth brain retards in here, so we always got to make it, retard proof. So I get it.
For sure. And by the way, I agree in terms of what you're saying. Again, in case people are saying you play in the middle ground, what you basically mean is whatever position anyone holds, largely speaking, everyone's speculating. Everyone's speculating about what's happening. Everyone's like, it could be this, it could be that. And so what you're saying is, based on your background as law enforcement, you're not really into the speculation aspect. You're just looking at what's a concrete fact and what's not, is basically what you mean, right?
Yeah, and when people, make this claim of a fence sitter or some shit like that, let's be clear. It's one thing to be a fence sitter when it comes to your political affiliation or your views on culture or something like that. That's one thing. But we're talking about a criminal fucking case here, right? So from my training, my experience, right, the first thing they teach you at the academy is you write your reports in a way where you're not saying that the person's guilty, but you're going to present the facts in an objective manner, and then it's the reader's job to come to the conclusion that they're guilty, right? Like you're the fact finder. Every police academy, every special agents academy, whether it's FBI, DEA, whatever, they drill this into your head. You're the fact finder. Your job is to put out objective reports, present it to the AUSA and the prosecutor, and then it's on the person that reads the reports to make the assertion like, oh yeah, this motherfucker's guilty. It's not your job to say that. You just present all the evidence. So I've kind of applied that mindset and that mantra to my analysis of big criminal cases in the United States. So that is why I'm waiting until all the information comes out. And I want to be explicitly clear about this too. There's a big difference between speculating and or waiting for evidence to come out in a criminal investigation versus being a fence sitter when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to abortion or this other stuff. Because these things are a bit more solid where you could take a stance, right? Because a lot of times it's hinging on your morals and other things like this. But when it comes to a criminal investigation, the United States was founded on the principle of innocent until proven guilty. So, based on my background, I apply that same lens whenever I'm looking at criminal cases. I'll give you a perfect example of this right now for you guys. So everyone came out and said Diddy was guilty, right? And I was like, well, you know what? The evidence does look a little bit weird. Let me go to the trial. Holy shit. The guy got charged with human trafficking, being a violent abuser, all this shit, right? And he was getting charged under RICO, right? And for those that are unaware, RICO is basically, pattern of racketeering activity, and they use sex trafficking as one of the prerequisite crimes, right? And then he like firebombed Kid Cudi's car, so they used not extortion, the other fucking. Well, regardless, you need two main crimes, right, over a period of time to charge a RICO case, right? So as I'm there sitting in the courtroom, a lot of things were debunked that were lies. A lot of people were saying like, oh yeah, Diddy was over here having, these parties and these freak-offs. Well, the truth actually is they were private. He would hire a male escort. They would come in. They'd have sex with Cassie. He would be sitting there watching. And it was never more than like those three or maybe two guys doing this. It wasn't the same thing that people were thinking about where it's a party and everyone's just doing an orgy, whatever, right? And then on top of that, when Cassie gave her testimony, there were a lot of holes in her story. And not only were there a lot of holes in her story, a lot of the sexual conduct was consensual by her own admission, right? And then when the defense attorneys for Diddy's team, he had very good attorneys, when they cross-examined Cassie, they made her lose a lot of credibility. And not only did they make Cassie lose a lot of credibility, they went after the woman from Danity Kane. They went after the Mia girl, who was one of his assistants that, made accusations that he was raping them. And quite frankly, this is why he was found acquitted of the sex trafficking, because the defense was able to really make the witnesses look like shit and show that they all had personal reasons and things to gain from this criminal investigation. A lot of these women that testified also had civil lawsuits against Diddy. And a bombshell that came out, and I'll never forget this when I was sitting there in the trial, Cassie got like a $10 or $20 million settlement from the Intercontinental Hotel. Well, no one had reported this. So I guess Diddy's lawyers had been doing some snooping, and they found out that she had this settlement. So they asked her a question. Hey, are you currently in the process of any other legal processes? And she was like, no. I was like, okay, well, is it not true that you recently accepted $10 million, or you just settled with Intercontinental Hotel for 10 to 20 million? I forget the exact number. And she said yes. And the whole fucking courtroom was like, oh shit, right? Because this was not reported anywhere. So little things like that, well, actually not little things, but significant things like that always come out during the trial. So, and that's why Diddy walked. That's why he only got a couple of years. They only got him on the interstate transportation of prostitutes. They couldn't get him on the RICO. They couldn't get him on the conspiracy because the witnesses weren't credible. So, trials are so effective at figuring out the culpability of the person being charged and the character of the witnesses.
For sure, for sure. Another example of that is Johnny Depp. Everyone thought he was guilty until we had He even was guilty in UK, but then when he saw the trial in America where the world was able to see it, people had a totally different perspective from it. So yeah, I get what you're saying there,
Yeah,
Myron.
dude. So that's why I always reserve my judgment. The Diddy case like was very, and I kind of knew this anyway from being in this world. But like going back to the Diddy case and like kind of putting my old agent hat on and watching the trial, I was like, yeah, this is why you can't jump to conclusions, because everyone thought Diddy was so guilty. Everyone thought he was running around and raping Justin Bieber and going nuts and having these orgies. Like, nah, man, this really comes down to this: Diddy is a pervert that paid for escorts from New York to come down to Miami or to LA to have sex with his wife so he can watch it. He basically went to jail for paying for flights for escorts, and that's how they got him on interstate transport, which is obviously a very embarrassing and retarded reason to go to jail. But a sex trafficker with this whole elaborate conspiracy or whatever, they absolutely did not prove that in court.
And just bringing it back to the Candace thing, obviously TPUSA has sent a legal letter to Candace. Their claim is that they warned her twice. One on, I believe, about December the 2nd or 4th or something, and the second time was, I believe, on December the 15th or 16th, the day before Amfest, the day then that Erica Kirk went to meet her. Therefore, she kind of gave her the warning. And from what I understand and from what I've read, it seems like this isn't even a defamation claim that they're making. Apparently, Candace was under an NDA, and under the NDA, she can't even talk about them negatively, even if that negative. And if you talk about someone negatively, even under an NDA, and even if that's true, you still can't talk about them. So it seems like they've got her. But what's your thoughts?
NDAs are so they vary so much, right? You can get a ironclad NDA and be able to really go after people, and then there's NDAs out there that are literally useless, right? Worse than toilet paper. So toilet paper would be more useful. So I'm assuming that the NDA is probably going to be at bare minimum good, because TPUSA has a whole team of lawyers. But who knows, man? Who knows? I think I think that I think a big reason why Erica also met with Candace was to establish malice. So in the United States, right, defamation is it's a high burden if the person's a public figure, right? So if you say something about someone that's famous, that person that's famous, if they decide to sue you, they need to not just prove that you defamed them, but you defamed them purposely and intentionally with malice. And I think from the Eric Kirk, and obviously I'm just speculating, but I'm thinking from the Erica Kirk and TPUSA perspective, a big part of her meeting with Candace and their strategy was to tell her, hey, this is what it is. And then if she says anything that kind of falls out of what they had told her, they're going to use that as ammunition to substantiate the critical element of the offense, which is the malice. That's why I think she agreed to meet with her. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if there were lawyers in the room, and that's why I think they're gonna. I think that's the strategy that they're gonna implement with this defamation. Should the cease and desist letter not work? That's what I think. That's my estimation. Obviously, I'm not a fortune teller, but just off the facts that I know, that's what I think she's trying to do: establish the malice.
I agree with that. For the defamation case, for sure. That's
yeah. In America, dude, it's so hard to sue someone for defamation. It's like if you're a celeb and you sue someone that's talking shit about you, it's a very high burden of proof. Cardi B, right, had to have an overwhelming amount of evidence against Tasha K. Johnny Depp had to have an overwhelming amount of evidence against Amber Heard. So it's a very hard and uphill battle. And many times you don't recoup the money you lost. You're literally just fighting to clear your name, and you're going to go down tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars to reclaim your name. And who knows, because that narrative might not even go out there, right? Like people might just say, oh no, this is that guy that got accused of rape. And then it just ends there. And they never found out that you actually were found not liable. So it's just a very sticky situation when it comes to defamation and celebrities.
No doubt about it. And the cost is unbelievable. So I've actually been involved in the sense of done defamation cases both in the UK and the US. There is a huge overlap. Obviously, as you're quite right in what you say. There's a higher burden of proof when it comes to celebrities in the United States of America. But but it's slightly cheap in the US in terms of defamation, but both are extraordinarily expensive in terms of both cases. This is going to cost Candace a lot of money. Like if this goes all the way to trial, you're looking at $300 to possibly even $500,000. If you're looking for more expensive lawyers, even more. In the UK, that's the minimum. It could even go to like 850,000. For example, a guy called Mohammed Dijab, he lost $850,000 just on the legal costs
Oh
of
shit.
Douglas.
He sued somebody?
He sued Douglas Murray and he lost. And so Douglas Murray's legal costs and the harm costs end up totaling £850,000, which is about $1.2 million. And that's just and in the UK, the cost in terms of reputational harm or damage is always extremely low. Actually, the biggest cost ends up being legal costs that you got to pay. In the US, they actually do, it's the kind of slightly the other way around. It's similar in the sense of in the US, the damages are always higher as well, and then the legal costs are high as well. So what I mean by that is if you look at Alex Jones, his legal costs were high, but then remember his actual damages were like $1 billion. So it just, in the US, the damages always be higher. But in terms of the court cases, there's a huge amount of overlap. I like managed cases in the US and in the UK in that regard. So you're right in what you said, 100%. If they do defamation case, the problem they can have with defamation cases, and I think it's a bit more complex, is she's going to probably have a decent amount of arguments, because you'll have to look at what she said, and we'll have to go into the details of what she said. But the question mark becomes, would a reasonable person come to that conclusion of what she said? And I would say some of the points made, you would argue reasonable people did do that. I mean, the vast majority of people agree with her. And then that's one aspect, and that's why I thought the NDA aspect is probably going to be stronger, because if you know about Candace Owens, she was under a major NDA with the Daily Wire as well. And because of that NDA, she actually never spoke out against them, and she fulfilled that NDA. And it's only when Ben Shapiro spoke out against her that then, based on the NDA, allowed her to speak out against him. Because I know for like a year, 2 years, she was never allowed to speak out against them.
Yeah.
So she strictly followed that NDA. Whereas the TPUSA NDA, she's not followed it. Now, I believe she said in her show that the NDA was defunct after Charlie Kirk passed or something like that. Or apparently it was a certain date that it was defunct, but apparently it wasn't. So I think that's where the complexity is going to come.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, Candace is, I've met Candace on multiple occasions now at this point. She's extremely sharp and intelligent. So I just don't see her, making these videos or, talking about this topic without being 100% sure that this NDA is going to come to bite her back. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure she probably sat down with a lawyer, went through it meticulously, and was able to formulate a strategy on how to cover this without violating that NDA, right? Because keep in mind that, Bridget Macron is suing her. I know Daily Wire is suing her, etc. So she's no stranger to lawsuits showing up at her front door. So I do think, and then obviously just because I know that she's a smart woman, I do think that she probably more than likely looked at that NDA extremely hard before she even went down this path of covering this thing. Or she uses certain phrases to ensure that she's not held liable. And I know she says things like, hey, well, it could be this. What's your thoughts on this? Hey, this looks like this. She did a really good job of not being like definitive in some of the episodes, which I think will come back and help her. So we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. But I just don't think Candace didn't go over this NDA or wasn't aware of it before making these videos. There's no way.
And from my understanding, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, or even the audience, that Candace hasn't revealed the entire legal letter that was sent to her. She kind of just read off certain bits.
Exactly.
Is that right? Or did she release the whole one?
I don't know if she released the whole one, but I do know that she showed some parts of it. I don't know if someone here can confirm for us or anything like that, or in my chat, guys, can you guys tell me if she dropped the whole thing? So, and that probably, if she didn't, it's probably a strategic reason, because normally Candace will put everything out for transparency. So if she didn't put it out, probably a legal reason and strategy for that. So Candace is very smart.
I agree.
So, so I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, the fact that like the Daily Wire has some kind of fucking ironclad NDA, bro. Because like even Brett Cooper didn't say shit when she left. It was like to this day I still don't know really what the fuck I know she kind of like flirted with it a little bit when she went on Sean Ryan's show, but like I still to this day don't even know the real reason she left. Like I think it was like I speculate it was something like maybe had to do with money or creative control, But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Daily Wire has got some concrete NDAs for sure. They really do keep their people under wraps.
Well, people forget that Ben
Myron,
Shapiro's a lawyer too. He went to Harvard. You know, like
who is? Oh, Shapiro.
Shapiro's a lawyer and he went to Harvard. Like, you know, we can make fun of Shapiro all day.
I know
but
you sound a bit anti-Semitic there.
yeah. Well, yeah, I'm actually going to give a compliment for once. You know, we can disagree with him on foreign policy and being a Zionist and everything else like that. But one thing we can't take away from him is the guy is smart. He's not stupid. So